Good afternoon everyone and welcome to our online session today discussing all things visa related. My name is Helen Foley and I'm the Senior Manager for Visa Compliance here at London Business School. I understand we have a range of different people registered today, those of you who are possibly only just considering applying to London Business School, some who may have already done so. So I'm going to cover a range of visa related topics to probably address a wide range of different questions. With a lot of media attention in the UK on visas and immigration lately, we're very conscious that there are lots of questions and probably concerns about obtaining a visa to study at LBS. So hopefully today's session will talk through the key facts that you need to know, and by doing so I'm sure this will help put your minds at rest about this one aspect of coming to the UK. Applying for a student visa in the UK need not be difficult. It is, as you'll see, bureaucratic with various steps along the way, as you would expect from any government organisation, but it is simply a process and it should not deter anyone from applying to London Business School. If you are the right student for LBS, then we and the UK will welcome you with open arms. So here are the key areas that I'm going to cover today. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, but if you leave these until the end of the session, that would be best, as chances are I may well cover most of the questions in today's session. So we'll kick off by looking at who needs a visa to study at LBS. To study full-time at LBS, any student from outside the EEA or Switzerland must apply for a specific student visa. You cannot study on our full-time courses on a tourist or a business visa. So this is for the MBA, the MIF full-time, the Masters in Management, the Sloan programme, as well as our new MFA, will all require a Tier 4 general visa for studying. For any students interested in our part-time programmes, so that's the Executive MBA, the MIF Weekend programme or our EMBA Global programme, in most cases you will require a student visitor visa, although in some cases it is possible to study on a general visitor visa, and I'll go into that in a bit more detail later on. The bulk of today's session is discussing Tier 4 visas, as this is the most complicated visa process. So that's what the majority of the time will be spent on today, but I will touch on student visitor visas towards the end. So looking first at obtaining a Tier 4 visa. Tier 4 visas are sponsored by the institution where you'll be studying. It's for students who have confirmed places on full-time degrees in the UK. LBS sponsors around 515 students on Tier 4 visas each academic year to ensure that we have the brightest and the best students studying here. Only apply for your visa after you've accepted your programme offer and paid your reservation fee. Now this may be £5,000, it varies per programme. For the Sloan programme it's £5,000, for the MBA and other programmes it is slightly more. And you can only apply for your Tier 4 visa after you have paid this required reservation fee. After this time we do provide full guidance on the next steps of your visa application, so don't think you're on your own, we can help you through it. There are three key elements required in order to apply for your Tier 4 visa, and these are listed on the slide here. The first you may already have heard of, the Confirmation of Acceptance for Studies, also known as the CAS. The second is what UKVI refer to as the maintenance requirement, which is essentially ensuring you have enough money to pay for your course and support yourself while you're in the UK. The third is a relatively new part of applying for a UK visa, and it's the requirement to pay an immigration healthcare surcharge, also known as an IHS, as part of completing your visa application. So we'll start by looking at the CAS. Any student wishing to study full-time in the UK needs to have a CAS. This is issued by the institution where you will be studying, so LBS will issue this to you. In doing so, we are confirming that you are a legitimate student who has gone through our rigorous application process, that you have the correct qualifications, knowledge and language skills, and that you have committed to attending LBS. The CAS itself is actually a unique reference number that we issue to you after you've paid your reservation fee and seen formal confirmation of your previous education qualifications. You then use this number on your visa application form to prove that you have a legitimate place at LBS. The CAS is valid for 6 months after issue, and it does become invalid after it's been used. Looking now at the requirement for money, UKVI sets strict financial criteria that you must adhere to as part of your visa application. When you submit your visa application, you must prove that you have enough money to cover the first year of your tuition fees, or your full fees if it's just a one-year programme, and an amount of living expenses. This is being increased shortly to £11,385 to show, in addition to your first year tuition fees. Listed on the slide here, I have the tuition fees for the 2015-16 academic years. These are subject to a slight increase for 2016-17, but this should give you a good indication of the amount of money that you have to be able to demonstrate as part of your visa application. There are a variety of different ways in which you can show evidence of this money, and I'm going to go into this in quite a lot of detail on the next slide. Any money that you've already paid to LBS, so your reservation or commitment fee or any other tuition fees you've already paid, is deducted from the total amount you do need to show. The maintenance requirement can seem quite daunting, and there is no flexibility given on the amount of money you have to show, or the length of time you have to have held that money for, or the documentation that must be provided. But it is simply being able to prove that you have the money that you would need to have access to anyway. This slide is very heavy in detail, and this is intentional, as this is the area, proving your financial requirements, where most mistakes are made with visa applications. The documentation accepted to prove this are very specific, and there is no flexibility with what will be accepted. We regrettably do have a small number of visas refused each year for students who do not follow this strict guidance. This can be easily avoided if you ensure to take the time to understand what will and what won't be accepted as evidence. Firstly, you can use funds that you have available in a bank account, but it is imperative that this money is available as immediate cash funds. It cannot be in any savings account that could be seen as an investment account or an account where the funds are not immediately available. To prove the money in a bank account, there are two different ways you can do this. You can use your bank statements. These must show that the funds have been available over a consecutive 28-day period ending no more than a month before the date of your application. The date of your application is the date you submit your online visa application, so the funds have to have been available for 28 days before the date you submit your online visa application. The bank statement must be an original bank statement showing all of the required account details, your name, the account number, the bank's name, logo, and so on. You should use original statements wherever possible. If you do wish to use e-statements, then these can be accepted as long as they are accompanied by either the bank's official stamp on every page or a letter from the bank confirming the authenticity of the e-statements. If you don't want to use bank statements, you can just use a letter from your bank or financial institution confirming that the funds are available. Consecutive 28-day period. If you're in the position of being sponsored to study at LBS, then you can use any money from an official financial sponsor in order to show that you have the funds available. An official financial sponsor, as defined by UKVI, is a university or government organisation or an international company who is providing you with financial assistance to support you on your studies. This can either be just towards tuition fees, or it can also cover the living expenses required as well. To prove this, you will have to show an official letter from the organisation or the government or university showing your name, the details of the sponsorship, the from the financial institution confirming your loan to prove that you have the funds available. It is very important to note that the loan must be explicitly for the provision of a student or academic loan. You cannot simply use a general loan in order to prove the financial requirements for your visa. The loan company must be regulated by the FCA or the overseas equivalent, and you must be able to provide an official letter from the loan company showing your name, the financial institution's name and logo, and confirming the amount of money that will be made available to you. Any students who are considering taking out a prodigy loan, a future finance loan, or possibly a loan through the US federal government, these are all accepted as loans for the purposes of visa application. If you're in the fortunate position that your parents or legal guardians wish to provide financial support for you, then they are able to do so. You have to provide proof of your relationship to your parents. So this will normally be a birth certificate, or if you don't have that available, then another government or court document that confirms your relationship to your parents. In addition to this, you also require a letter of permission from your parents, where they give their clear consent for their money to be used to help fund your studies. There are a couple of situations in which you don't need to demonstrate that you have the money available. As I said earlier, any money that's already been paid to LBS for tuition fees will be included when we issue your CAS number to you, and we confirm this to the Home Office so that you don't have to prove the funds independently. Quite simply, the more money you pay towards your fees up front, the less you need to demonstrate elsewhere, so it can be very beneficial to do for the money to be held on a bank account. If you do pay more money onto your fees after you've had your CAS issued to you, then this is also possible, but we do need to make a manual update of this, and we'll give much more information about this when it comes to your visa application. If you're in receipt of an LBS scholarship, and that these funds will count towards meeting the tuition fee requirement. It's important at this stage to note that any documents that you submit, including all of these financial documents, must be translated into English if English is not the language that they are originally in. This is true for any letters as well as any bank statements that you have. I put a few notes on this slide here to indicate what money is not accepted as evidence. Any property or shares, bonds, pension funds or other similar savings accounts are not accepted by UKVI as evidence of the funds available, so you cannot use these. Bank accounts of siblings and partners are also not permitted to be used unless you are named on the bank account as a joint account holder. So although you can use your parents' account, you can't currently use siblings or husband or wife or partner. You cannot use a loan that is in someone else's name or a loan that has any conditions attached. So your parents, for example, cannot take out a loan in their name in order to prove that you meet the requirements. And there's also a list of institutions, of financial institutions that are not recognised by UKVI. We can give more information on this if you want to double check that your institution is acceptable. So the next area of preparation for you is to ensure that you have all of the supporting documentation that you need. For all applicants, you will need to physically submit your passport, any previous passports you have if you have them available, and 2 passport-sized photographs. You therefore need to be aware that you'll be unable to leave the country while your application is being processed because UKVI will hold on to your passport for the period of application. Most applicants are also required to submit a number of additional documents in support of their application. Firstly, whatever document that your CAS was based on must be submitted. This will be your highest education qualification as listed on your CAS statement. You must either submit the original degree certificate or an original official transcript. Photocopies will not be accepted. You're also required, as I've already gone into detail on, to submit documentary evidence of your ability to meet the financial requirements. Now, we do have an LBS checklist for each of the possible financial documents, which we'll make available to you at the time of application. The documents that you provide must match this directly. In some better news, UKVI has made a concession for some applicants with regards to further documentation. If you're a national of one of the countries listed in the blue box on this slide and you're applying from within that country, then you're considered low risk and are not required to submit any further documentation. It's important to note that you must still have them, but you don't need to submit them as part of your visa application. This only applies if you're one of the nationalities listed on this slide and you're applying from within that country or from within the UK itself. As I mentioned earlier, the Immigration Healthcare Surcharge, IHS, has recently been introduced as a mandatory payment as part of the visa application. Anyone, with a couple of small exceptions, applying to come to the UK for longer than 6 months must pay this charge as part of the visa application. It covers the period of time of your entire visa, not just the period of your studies. So there'll be a period of time before and after your studies that it covers as well. And it's payable at £150 per year for each student. Any dependents you're bringing with you must also pay an additional sum of £150 per year per person for the duration of your time in the UK. The period starts, as I said, from the visa valid from date, which is normally 1 month before the programme start date, and it ends at your visa expiry date, which is normally 4 months after the programme end date. There are a couple of exemptions. Nationals of Australia and New Zealand, as well as British Overseas Territory citizens resident in the Falkland Islands, are currently exempt from paying the fee. You still need to complete the application process, but there will be no fee required for payment. So, once you have your CAS and you're confident that your funds are in place, you can actually apply. I'm going to talk first about applying from outside the UK, as this is where most of you will apply from. You should, in most cases, apply from your country of residence. You can apply for your visa 3 months before the registration for your programme starts, which is normally about 2 weeks before the programme. I've put a timeline here for MBA 2018, but this is still to be confirmed, but it's just to give you an idea of when the process can start from you. We normally make CAS available from around May the 1st each year, and based on the start dates for MBA 2017, you will be able to apply from May the 3rd, which will be 3 months before the programme start date if you're applying for the MBA programme. The registration period for the MBA programme starts on the 3rd of August, and the programme start date was around the 17th of August. The timelines for all of the programmes will be similar to this, in that you'll be able to get your CAS and apply for your visa around 3 months before the registration period for your programme starts. Something we get asked a lot is, how long will it take to get my visa? I'm afraid this isn't a question with a definite answer. In most cases, the process should be completed within 15 working days, and this is met in the vast majority of cases. However, some will take longer, and a very few will take considerably longer. Because of the uncertainty, we very strongly advise you to apply as soon as possible after the 3-month date has passed. When you get to that stage, we provide detailed guidance notes on completing your online application. These will be available to you when you accept your place on the programme. In addition to the application form, you must send the supporting documentation, which I've talked about already. Following the submission of your online application, you'll need to attend a visa application centre to submit your biometric information and attend a short interview before you complete your application by submitting all of your documents to UKVI. In some cases, you may be contacted before this appointment to be advised that you will have a more full interview as part of your process. This is known as a credibility interviewing process. This is mandatory in a number of countries around the world now, and it's actually carried out by video conference to a Home Office location in the UK. The interview will be very straightforward. It will ask about your plans, about why you picked LBS to study at, what you know about the course, and possibly about what your plans are after the programme. As long as you answer honestly, there's nothing to be concerned about for the interview. When your visa is approved when you apply from outside the UK, you'll actually only receive an entry visa for the UK. This is valid for 30 days in order to allow you entry to the UK. Your full visa will actually be available for you to collect on arrival in the UK. The entry visa valid for 30 days is based on your course start date and the date of intended travel that you give on your online application form. It's very important to be as accurate as possible with this, as getting a replacement entry visa is an expense and a hassle that I can say from experience is something that you want to avoid. When you've received your entry visa, you'll also receive a letter telling you when and where to collect your full visa from within the UK, and this is determined by the postcode that you give on your visa application. Looking now at applications from inside the UK, there are a limited number of situations in which you can apply from within the UK. It's dependent on your current immigration status. If you're in the UK as a visitor or on a temporary basis, you will not be able to apply from here. You'll need to return to your home country. If you're here under Tier 1 or Tier 2 or already studying under Tier 4 at a different institution, you should be able to apply from the UK. We will give more information on this after your offer has been made at LBS. Similar to applying outside the UK, you can apply up to 3 months before the programme start date, and you must apply before your current UK immigration permission ends. If there's a gap of more than 3 months between one ending and the next one beginning, then you will need to apply to your home. You will need to return to your home country to apply. Visa processing times in the UK can vary quite a lot and are ironically quite a lot longer than if you apply outside the UK. In many instances, it can take up to 8 weeks to apply for your visa. However, on the plus side, you can start studying at LBS as long as we have proof that you have already applied for your Tier 4 visa in the UK. We don't actually have to see a receipt of your Tier 4 visa, we just need to know that you have applied for it. As in all cases, we advise that you apply as soon as possible for your visa in order to avoid any unnecessary delays. So that's all of the hard-hitting legal and financial bits. I've put a few of the most frequently asked questions about Tier 4 on this slide. You can bring your family with you when you're on Tier 4. This can be your husband, wife, civil partner, unmarried partner, same-sex partner, as well as any children aged under 18 years old, and they have full working and studying rights in the UK. If you're not married to your partner, you will have to prove that you have been in a relationship similar to marriage for at least 2 years. This is normally evidenced by mortgage statements, tenancy agreements, utility bills, basically anything that shows that you have been living at the same address for at least 2 years. When applying, there are additional financial requirements per dependent, and these go up to £7,605 from November this year. That's per dependent coming with you to the UK, as well as the additional immigration healthcare surcharge fee that I mentioned earlier. And as a final point, just to note, you do have to prove that you are related to your dependent. So in the case of marriage, this will normally be a marriage certificate. For children, it will be their birth certificate. And as I mentioned, for unmarried partners, it will be evidence that you are in a relationship similar to marriage. In terms of working while you're studying, under Tier 4 you can work 20 hours per week during term time and full-time work during any vacation or non-study periods at the school. Your visas will be issued for the length of your programme plus an additional 4 months at the end of the programme. So you are permitted to stay in the UK for 4 months after the end of your programme. And in terms of working after your studies, a large number of our students do this every year, and there are 2 main routes by which you can do so. And we do have a fantastic career centre who will support you every step of the way with this. The first route is under Tier 2. Under Tier 2 sponsorship, London Business School students can switch easily from Tier 4 to take up a permanent job in the UK. The employer must be a Tier 2 sponsor, and there are around 29,000 Tier 2 sponsors currently, so it's not a small or select group at all. Due to an exemption in Home Office policy, full-time students from the UK who have a degree from the UK can switch to a Tier 4 visa within 4 months of graduating if their prospective employer is a Tier 2 sponsor and the job pays more than a minimum of £21,500. There are no hiring caps, no tests or quotas for LBS students graduating and switching onto Tier 2. You may have heard mention of resident labour market tests or limited numbers of visas available. None of this applies to LBS students switching from Tier 4 and wanting to stay and work in the UK. Under Tier 2, visas can currently be approved for up to 5 years, although this is at the discretion of your employer. If you're more interested in being self-employed, the Tier 1 Graduate Entrepreneur Visa was introduced a few years ago for LBS students with credible, genuine business ideas who wish to stay in the UK to work on their own businesses. LBS is an endorsing institution, which essentially means we continue to sponsor students under the Tier 1 Graduate Entrepreneur route after they've completed their programme. We have up to 40 visas to endorse each year via a competitive application process. The visa can be issued for an initial period of 12 months, and this can be extended by a further 12 months if things are going well. Although the primary activity during this time must be your business idea, you are also free to take on additional or supplementary employment. Okay, I'm just going to spend just 1 minute now talking about visas required for our part-time programmes. For part-time programmes at LBS, you're not eligible for a Tier 4 visa, which in most cases mean that you will need to apply for a student visitor visa. Depending on your nationality, you may need to apply for this before you travel to the UK. If you're a visa national, this is the case for you, and there's a list of what constitutes a visa national available on the UKVI website. If this does apply to you, you will need to apply in advance, providing your passport, your offer letter from LBS, and evidence that you can support yourself financially for the duration of your studies in the UK. If you're a non-visa national, so somebody who doesn't need to apply in advance, you can simply come to the UK with your passport, your offer letter from LBS, and evidence that you can support yourself financially for the duration of your studies. And you can just arrive in the UK at the border and be permitted entry as a student visitor. In both these cases, you will be permitted entry for 6 months as a student visitor. As our part-time programmes last longer than 6 months, it is likely that you will have to apply for more than one visa during your time on the programme. It might be important to note that if you're studying on a business or general visitor visa, if you're already on a business or general visitor visa for the UK, then this permits study in the UK for up to 30 days in any 6-month period without having to apply for an additional student visitor visa. Your main reason for holding the visa must still be to visit the UK on business or for a holiday or to see family, but it does also permit you to do up to 30 days studies, which covers EMBA, MIF Part-Time and the EMBA Global Programme. If the purpose of your visits to the UK does change to just being for study, then we do advise that you apply for a specific student visitor visa. I appreciate that this is quite a lot of information to present you with a lot of detail involved. And we will support you in providing the right guidance in completing your application, advise on timelines, documents and so on. We have very, very few problems each year. The process does work, we just need to follow the correct rules in order to make sure everything goes well. I'm happy for you to type through any questions that you may have, but I've also included a few links on the slide here as to where you can get support at a later date if you can't think of what you want to ask now. We will be emailing through the slides and a recording of today's presentation, so you should receive that within the next couple of days. Please do type through any questions that you have and I'll answer them as soon as I can. I've had a question about the situation for someone who's a dual national. So if you have any type of EU nationality at all, for example, if you're Brazilian and also have Portuguese nationality, then you don't have to apply for a visa to study in the UK. Having EU nationality allows you full working and studying rights in the UK, so you're not required to get a visa, even if this is your secondary or in some cases third nationality. I've had another question asking about part-time students bringing family to the UK. Currently, part-time students who are coming to study on visitor visas in the UK cannot bring family with them. If family wants to come and join you in the UK for some of the time, they can do so, but they would have to apply for a visitor visa in their own right, rather than coming as a dependent, as I talked about for Tier 4. But another question about dependents relating to Tier 4 students, and whether or not Tier 4 dependents have to apply at the same time as the Tier 4 applicant, or that if they can apply later. And that's entirely up to you. They cannot apply before you apply as the main Tier 4 applicant, but if they are going to be coming at the same time as you, then they should apply at the same time. If they're not going to be coming to the UK until, for example, 3 or 4 months later, then they can and should wait to apply closer to the time they're coming to the UK. Also worth noting on Tier 4 dependents that although you can bring children with you as a Tier 4 dependent, in order to do so, both the child's parents must also be coming to the UK. So if you were just coming on your own with your child to the UK, your child's visa would not be approved. Both the mother and father of the child have to be coming to the UK in order for the child's visa to be approved. I've had a question come through about permanent residency of an EU country and whether or not that still requires a Tier 4 visa. It currently does still require a Tier 4 visa. You can only count actual EU citizenship or EU nationality in order to not be required to have a visa to come here. If it's just permanent residency that you have, then I'm afraid you do still need a visa in order to study in the UK. Right, I don't think there's any more questions coming through just now, so thank you very much for logging in today. As I said, the slides and the recording of the presentation will be shared with you by email within the next couple of days, so do keep an eye out for that. If you do have any questions that come to you later, then please do have a look at some of the links on this slide.